And my mum came home one day and said, I found a team for you to play for. So I'm like, okay, brilliant. If I'm honest, I think she just got sick of me breaking the pot plants in the back garden and washing all the ball marks off the windows. So I said, right, okay, when is it? Right, Wednesday. So she takes me down to we trained indoors at the secondary school down the road. So she takes me down there and I walk in and there was one thing she forgot to tell me. It was a boys team. So I walk in, I'm the only girl in the room. I had really long hair down to my bum and all the boys looked at me like I had two heads. And I remember thinking to myself, this is going to be a real challenge. And I was only 10 at the time. So we were playing and we were probably about 45 minutes into the session. And I remember running around and I was sweating. And I remember thinking, I haven't even touched the ball yet. And there was probably about 14 boys and myself. And they wouldn't pass to me. Because I was a girl, they didn't think I was any good. So they didn't include me in anything. And I remember thinking, it's an hour and a half session. I either put up with this for the next 45 minutes, get back in my car and go home and never come back again, which, if I'm honest, there was probably part of me that wanted to do that. But then I'm far too stubborn. So rolled my sleeves up, waited till the biggest lad got the ball and then smashed him up against the wall, nicked the ball, dribbled around a couple and put it in the back of the net. And for about 30 seconds, there was absolute silence. And I remember thinking, oh dear, I've made a mistake. And then one of them said, she's not supposed to be able to do that. She's a girl. And another lad who I'm still good friends with said, well, I think she just did. And from then on, everything changed. I became one of them, one of the boys, so to speak. They would pass to me. I had a great time. I played in the league. Not only was I the only girl in that team, I was the only girl in the entire league. So when everybody else used to turn up and get changed in the changing rooms, I would turn up in my kit ready because there was nowhere for me to get changed. And obviously at 11 or 12, I wasn't comfortable to get changed with the boys. I would also not always be on time because my granddad used to take me a lot because my mum worked 3 jobs a day, 7 days a week just to keep a roof over her head. So she wasn't around much to take me. And my granddad was notoriously late for everything. So I'd be the kid turning up just as the whistle was about to start. The good thing was that, you know, I was accepted by them. I scored a lot of goals. I used to play as a centre forward back then. And I absolutely loved playing in that team. And at the end of the season, still a highlight for me, despite what I've gone on to achieve. We had an end of season awards and I actually won their Players Player of the Year. And that's a highlight for me because it meant that I earned their respect. So once I picked up my award, I sat down with my manager and I was obviously over the moon to win this award. And he said to me, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to play for us next year. And I remember thinking, he hasn't said that to anyone else. And actually what I hadn't realised was, unfortunately, due to mixed sport rules back then, the minute you reached 12 years old, you were no longer allowed to play mixed sport. So my football team, I had to quit. My school team, I couldn't play anymore. And any form of football that I actually loved doing was pretty much taken away overnight because I couldn't play with the boys. There was very little girls' teams around, if any. So I didn't really know what I was going to do. Fortunately for me, throughout the summer of that year, a girls' little league had popped up around the corner from my house at the park. Which meant it was going to have 8 teams in it. All the local girls were going to go and play, and it was an opportunity for me to go and play. And it also meant I could be on time because I only had to walk there. So we trained once a week and we played on the weekends. Was it as challenging as I needed it to be? Probably not. But again, I talk about opportunity. This is where probably the biggest moment happened in my career. Was there was a man who was Chelsea ladies manager at the time, and Chelsea only had a senior team, and he'd come over to watch the young girls train to see if there was any talent. And he'd obviously been watching and spotted that I had a bit of talent. And I could see he was talking to my mum. I didn't know who he was at the time. I just saw this strange man talking to my mum and very protective over my family. So at half time, instead of going to the manager, I go to my mum. I'm like, who's he? And he put his hand out. He said, Chelsea ladies manager, I've been watching you play. I'd really like you to come and train with us. So, well, I nearly ripped his arm off. So I was like, where, when? And he said, don't worry, you go and play the second half. I'll sort the details out with your mum. So I'm walking home with my mum that day after the game. We've won. I've scored a couple of goals. So it's a really good day in my life. We get home and we're having a chat. And mum said, just sit down for a second. I need to talk this through with you. I was like, right, okay. And then what we realised very quickly was you had to pay to play, even for Chelsea Football Club. The manager was a volunteer. We had to pay kit subscriptions, we had to pay for training, we had to pay for games. We didn't have a lot of money back then. Like I said, my mum worked a lot just to keep a roof over our head. We didn't have new boots and new kit like that. It was very much what we could get our hands on. So for £8 a week, it was a bit of a struggle. The good thing is my mum had a conversation with the manager, and the manager, who I'm still in contact with now, let us pay less. You know, we paid less subs, we paid less for the kit. And he also arranged lifts for me as well. He would actually pick me up and take me because, like I said, my mum was working. She worked cleaning other people's houses in the morning. She worked in a betting shop in the day, and she worked at pubs at night. So we used to train on a Wednesday and Friday night, and he would take me. And if he didn't take me, one of the other players would, because at 12 years old, there was only two teams at Chelsea, and that was the senior team and the reserve team. So I had to play senior football from the age of 12. Legally, you're not supposed to till you're 14. So we used to fake my registration, date of birth on my registration so that I could play. And luckily I was quite tall, so I could get away with it. I broke into the first team within a kind of 6 weeks of being there, which was fantastic. And it also meant that, if I'm honest, I always saw the opportunity that I always had a lift. So, you know, the players and the girls were fantastic. He used to pick me up, drop me off, and he would pick me up and drop me off. And it was that same manager when I was 14 said, you know, I think you've got potential to play for England.